So a couple of weeks back, or really a couple of months ago now, I finally got around to seeing Dune Part 2, and I was probably one of the last people in my office to see it, and everyone I spoke to had said that it was absolutely amazing, way better than Part 1, which really is exactly what I needed to hear because, I hate to say it, but I wasn't the biggest fan of Dune Part 1. There were a lot of things that it did well, but it just felt like too much of a setup to things to happen further down the line and less of a movie in itself. So with all of that in mind, I got around to seeing a screening, sat down, 2 and a bit hours later, I came out, and you know what? Everyone was absolutely right. This is by far one of the best sci-fi films I've ever seen, let alone from the last couple of years, and certainly probably my favorite sci-fi since Blade Runner 2049. And at this point, the director Denis Villeneuve has pretty much shown that he is the absolute king of sci-fi in the modern age. 2016's Arrival was more of a drama than a science fiction film, and it added a certain amount of gravitas to that genre, showing an alien invasion plot, but in a way that just really hadn't been done before. And then only a year after that film came out, Villeneuve dropped Blade Runner 2049, and yeah, I mean, I know that it had its detractors, and yet I have no idea why, because this film is an absolute masterpiece. It truly understood what Blade Runner was all about and how to recreate that world. That suffocating vision of LA is just portrayed so amazingly in the sequel. And one of the things that it does really well is give you a real sense of place with regards to Ryan Gosling's character. The fact that we spend so much time in his apartment really makes you feel as if it's a world that genuinely is being lived in and not a really far out there sci-fi concept that is a little too hard to put yourself into. And now we have the Dune series, which finally seems to be doing Frank Herbert's original work justice in a way that David Lynch's adaptation just never could. That's one hell of a resume right there, and particularly with Dune and Blade Runner, those are some of the biggest sci-fi franchises out there. And it started to make me think, where does a director like that go next? And well, why not Star Wars? And sure, you can argue that Star Wars just isn't what it used to be, and there's a little bit too much saturation afoot, but let's be honest, when it comes to sci-fi, there really isn't a franchise out there with the same amount of brand recognition. And just imagine what someone like Villeneuve could bring to the table. And I think there's already a template out there for what that might look like with the Disney Plus series Andor, which wasn't all about crazy space battles and stuff that you tend to see in the films. This was a more grounded story about rebellion and the threat of dictatorship on a more personal level. Trying my best to avoid spoilers here, because if you haven't seen Andor, I absolutely cannot recommend it enough, but there are multiple times in the show where the tension of what the characters are feeling, knowing that they might be reported to the Empire at any moment, really seeps through the screen. The series is really like nothing else in the Star Wars franchise, and it shows that pretty much just like what Villeneuve is great at, it can do a more dramatic take at something within that universe. On top of that, however, I'd like to see Villeneuve's sense of visuals applied to the world of Star Wars. Think back to Joy's billboard in Blade Runner 2049, or even the Harkonnen homeworld in Dune Part 2, with its complete absence of colour. These moments stand out in your mind because they are an absolute visual feast for the eyes, and it shows an element of filmmaking where what the viewer sees is just as important as what's happening in the story. I would love to see all of that injected into a Star Wars film, even if it's just one, because let's face it, not everything has to be a trilogy, but I really think that someone like Villeneuve could inject new life into the Star Wars franchise. And if you happen to agree with me, then please let me know in the comments below, and while you're here, why not hit that subscribe button as well. But above all, thank you for watching.